Glenn, please don't go far as we move to our next update. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to strike thousands of targets linked to the Iranian regime, describing it as a terrorist entity. In a message directed at the people of Iran, Netanyahu urged them to seize what he called a once-in-a-generation opportunity to overthrow the regime. He called on Iranians from all ethnic groups, including Persians, Kurds, Azeris, Ahwazis and Baluchis, to unite and take to the streets in massive numbers. Netanyahu promised that their suffering would not be in vain, emphasising that external support has arrived and now is the time for Iranians to reclaim their future from tyranny. Joining us again, we have Glenn Grant, ex-advisor to Defence Minister of Ukraine and geopolitical commentator in Riga. Now, Glenn, what chance do the Iranian people have of a democratic outcome in this conflict? There's been a lot of external support in the diaspora for the Reza Pahlavi, who is previously part of the monarchy in Iran. Iran also has, of course, lots of ethnic minorities, which could complicate proceedings further, as there could be perhaps a conflict of interest between the ethnic groups. What's your outlook on what Iran's government could look like once the war is finished?
I think you've got to look at this not in a simple fashion. The first thing is that for the current regime to exist, that means there are tens of thousands of people that are of, you might say, of like-mindedness, of like-minded nastiness, because you can't go around killing people. You can't stop society's unrest all over the country unless you've got huge numbers actually supporting the government. So how many of those are going to realize that they're in trouble if there's a democratic country comes? Because a lot of them are actually going to end up being prosecuted and possibly killed, hung for their deeds in the last 40 years. So don't assume that society is so strong that it can overcome all these others, because when you've got lots of nasty people, some of those nasty people are just waiting, they're just begging to get their place on the podium to be in charge. Secondly, we've tried to do this before, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, and it hasn't always worked out very well. I mean, there's still huge amounts of fighting and death in those places, and when you remove power from anywhere, you get a vacuum, but there are always people who are willing to step into that vacuum, as I've just said, and some of those are not very nice. I think that the diaspora can be discounted. I mean, what are they going to do? If they're not there on the ground, they're doing nothing. They're just talking and taking their place in the limelight, but they're not actually helping. So is this attack actually going to create the democracy that people would like? Well, I'm still in a large amount of doubt about that, because I just don't see that attacking people with rockets is actually going to change the regime. It'll kill a few people, but whether it does anything else, whether it does enough, is really, really open to doubt at the moment.
Okay. And Glenn, just on Netanyahu's comments, he's emphasised that external support has arrived. What do you think is the likelihood of boots on the ground from Israel or the United States in Iran at this stage, as this would most likely be an incredibly unpopular option domestically in the United States? Has technology in war moved past the need for soldiers to risk their lives in wars like these, when we're just seeing a lot of missiles going back and forward?
I think that the chances of boots on the ground are less than zero in both cases. Israel hasn't got enough people to do this and carry on what it's been doing in Gaza, and their troops are not designed for this sort of war. And the Americans, I don't think so. They'd have to actually shift a huge amount of people across. I mean, just go back to how many people we put on the ground for the Gulf War. the First and Second Gulf War. Lots. Far more than America can actually put onto the ground at the moment on its own. So I think that's a zero. Has technology changed how these things work? Only by chance, not by design. Really, you've got to have people there. You've got to have boots on the ground. You've got to have real people. Technology can't put flags in places. It can't go into buildings and actually remove people out. It can only kill them, and that doesn't always work. So I think as they say, the jury is out on this case. But I think there's a lot more talk and hot air than there is actual practical assistance.
Okay. Just now turning to the global reaction. We've seen lots of positive reactions from global governments such as the Prime Minister of Australia, Anthony Albanese, and other heads of state. Now, the removal of the Supreme Leader has been popular, but do you think another war in the Middle East would become much more unpopular, especially with the context given of the Iraq War now 20 years ago and the failed state that it became after that?
This is very simple. Nobody wants another war. And I think most people will be most leaders around the world will be looking at this with a mixture of please let it work on one side, but actually a feeling of we don't want to get any worse, because none of us want to get pulled into something that actually does get bigger and wider. To be honest, I don't think it will get bigger and wider. I think it'll stay localized. But what it is doing, in my view, is eating valuable ammunition for America and arguably Israel that is probably needed for other things that are more important than this at the moment. Hard to say. I can't see any world leader really wanting to say, yeah, jolly good, let's go and join this. I just don't think they will.
Now, Glenn, please stay with us as we move to our next update. The Ayatollah Alireza Arafi has been appointed as the jurist member of the Temporary Leadership Council, tasked with fulfilling the duties of Iran's supreme leader following the death of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iranian state media reported. The council, formed under Iran's constitution, also includes the president and the judiciary chief, and will carry out leadership functions until a new supreme leader is selected by the assembly of experts. Joining us again live, we have Glenn Grant, ex-advisor to the Defence Minister of Ukraine, also a geopolitical commentator in Riga. Now, Glenn, how long do you think it will take before we see a new supreme leader chosen by this council?
This is going to depend upon the war. They will want one in place as quickly as possible, because leadership is the vital component for the defence of any country. Take away the leader, and doubt starts to creep in all over the place amongst the people that are needed to keep the old regime working, like the police and the security forces and the Republican Guard. So they will want clarity of leadership as soon as possible. You could even see something even in 24 hours. But obviously the danger is, right at the moment, is that if they make everything too clear, then there is a danger that the missiles are going to come pouring down on the new man's head, and that would not be a good thing for the leadership defence of the country. So I expect them to leave the interim group in place until it becomes more clear about how the war is actually going.
Now, Glenn, what do you think, to what extent, how essential do you believe that Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's leadership was to the regime? Do you think the Islamic regime will be able to move on and transition smoothly with this next leader, especially during a time of war?
I don't have any doubts they will. Because the Ayatollah is going to have surrounded himself as best as he can with loyal people, and most of them will have already thought through of what's going to happen if we lose the Ayatollah, because he's an old man. He was an old man, so he could have died any day now anyway. So the succession plan will have been thought through and talked through by lots of people in the power game. So I don't think that they will have a difficulty unless there is a feeling of weakness amongst the whole government, in which case then you could see lots of factions break away and you could see a serious power struggle. But I'm not convinced that a power struggle is going to come unless there's actually much more damage done to the leadership structure than now.
Okay, Glenn, thank you so much for coming on our show today. Now, as we move on to our next story and update in this war, explosions have rocked Bahrain's capital, Manama, early today, causing significant damage to the Crown Plaza Hotel. Smoke and fire were observed emanating from the hotel's vicinity, with authorities confirming that several missiles had struck the area. Bahraini civil defense teams have rushed to investigate the incident. The strikes come as part of a broader escalation in the region, with Iran targeting its neighbours in retaliation for recent military buildings, but some missiles ended up at the Crown Hotel Plaza. Visuals on your TV And that's all that we have time for. Please keep watching NewsX World for more news updates around the world.